This is my fourth and final short video, just giving some background and explanation to my new book, Finding Life After Death, a Biblical Survivor's Guide. In the previous three videos, we gave an overall introduction, then we looked at the biblical perspective and acknowledged how painful it is to go through grief. The third section of the book reflects on how God has an ultimate redemptive purpose, even in and through our pain. So the book has these three primary themes: biblical perspective, pain, and finding God's purpose. In the book, I put it this way: when our perspective becomes so clouded by our pain, we might fail to be able to discern God's purposes in and through times of suffering. The premise of the final part of the book is that as believers in Jesus, our pain is not in vain. We have the assurance that God is always at work in our lives and is working out His perfect purposes, even in our suffering. As Paul writes in Philippians 2 verse 13, "For it is God who works in you to will and to act in order to fulfill His good purpose." Having been through deep loss myself, my testimony is that God has redeemed my pain. One primary way God has redeemed my pain is through actually enabling me to share my story, to write the first book, Grief and Grace, and now this book, to have opportunities to speak publicly on radio, etc., as I've sought to help others navigate grief and loss. It was a gift that God has given me that I've been able to articulate some of the deep lessons that He has taken me through. I've also had the blessing of remarriage, which I talk about briefly in the book. But finding God's purpose is not necessarily about having a happy ever after story. Rather, it's recognizing that God is deeply at work in and through us and reveals treasures of faith to us, even in times of darkness. The story of the Bible is that God does redeem, restore, and resurrect. And these are the themes I explore in the final chapters of Finding Life After Death. Clearly, the name of the book is meant to have a double meaning. Our hope as believers is that we don't believe that death is the end of our story. For those who die in Christ, or for those of us who remain, death is not the end of the story. The hope we have is that God's redemptive story is still being written. So we are not, even though grief is real, even though I explain that lament is so important, we are not to be defined by our grief, even when we go through deep loss. Rather, we should be defined by our hope in the resurrection, because in an ultimate sense, we have found life after death. In Jesus, our eternal destiny, your eternal destiny is secure, and the sting of death has been defeated. Verses that are so commonly read about this are 1 Corinthians 15 verse 55 to 57. I'm going to read the Message Bible version of these verses that explains this so well. It says this: "In the resurrection scheme of things, this has to happen. Everything perishable taken off the shelves and replaced by the imperishable. This mortal replaced by the immortal. Then the saying will come true: death swallowed by triumphant life. Who got the last word, O death? O death, who's afraid of you now?" It was sin that made death so frightening, and law code guilt that gave sin its leverage, its destructive power. But now, in a single victorious stroke of life, all three, sin, guilt, death, are gone. The gift of our Master, Jesus Christ. Thank God. God indeed. So I hope these introductory videos to the book have been helpful. Clearly they're just surface level introductions that I hope cause you to want to dive deeper into the material. In the book there are also reflection guides to help you reflect upon the book deeply and apply it to your own circumstances. Please see details on how to get hold of the book on the links on these posts, and feel free to reach out to me at the contact details contained. Also visit griefandgrace.org for more resources, including our Grief and Grace video series and access to get hold of all these resources. My hope is that you will read the book and that you will feel assured in this crazy world, in this sometimes depressing and difficult and dark world where there is lots of suffering. My hope is that you will feel assured that God is in control. The Bible is a genuine survival guide for survivors, and that you can find life after death. Thanks for watching.